Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fall 2020 end of semester reading. It's our undergraduate showcase with 15 amazing writers from this semester of creative writing. I'm so excited to present these readers and these writers. They've worked so hard on all their work. And yeah, let's just get started. Our first reader is Melikay Akolu, and take it away, Melikay.
So this is a section from a piece I wrote called Bread Deconstructed. In Turkey, they have their own version of a bodega crossed with a bakery called a bakkal on every corner of every street. They sell a variety of items, just like a bodega, but from my limited time in Turkey during summer vacations, the item I remember most is the bread, hence the bakery. Every bakkal sells fresh baked bread that tastes better than any other bread I have ever tasted in my life, or at least I thought so at the time. Just like France and their baguettes, by evening, everyone on the streets in Turkey is holding a fresh loaf of bread for dinner, ready to be served at home. Outside of those summer vacations, I've never really longed for the whole go down to the bakkal and get bread for tonight culture that exists there. How could I when I grew up thousands of miles from the nearest bakkal? There was one summer where I spent 2 months in Turkey, and every night my cousin and I would go to the bakkal down the street and get the bread for dinner. I will admit, the few weeks after that summer, I did long for the daily toasty bread, the walk to the bakkal, and the race to get home before sunset. I haven't visited Turkey in almost 7 years, but I can still feel my flip flops in the dirt, see the orange hue of the setting sun in the distance, smell the warm loaf of bread in my hands, and hear the sound of my cousin shouting at me to catch up with him. Even so, if there's anything I long for, it's the occasion, not the bread. After almost 8 years of having not visited Turkey, I no longer remember exactly how the bread felt or tasted, so I don't really feel a gaping hole in my life without it, albeit I do remember loving it. My parents have tried to recreate our Turkish culture as much as possible in America, given that there is so much they miss, the bakkal experience being one of them. The experience being not just the taste or texture of the bread, but also the walk to and from the bakkal, the smile of the sweet old man that seems to work at every bakkal, and the smell of the fresh loaf wafting over a home cooked meal. My mom has been baking bread for us my whole life, and probably beforehand too. One recurring childhood memory I have is of her baking bread. I don't remember much about the actual bread making process, except for details here and there. She would bring out this huge stainless steel bowl to make it in, along with all of the ingredients, and it felt like by the time I looked away for a second and looked back again, she was already elbow deep in dough. She would sit me by her, saying, "Watch how I make it, then one day you'll be making these breads for us." She would give me a pitcher of water and tell me to pour slowly, and I would sit there for what I wish could be hours, pouring the water on her flour covered hands as she made the dough firmer. My eyes would be in a trance, watching what I assumed to be magic, as my mom made flour and water into soft and pliable dough. It never got old. It was the same process every time, and yet every time I would watch as excitedly as I did the first time. If I happened to be nearby and saw that she had the water pitcher in her hands, pouring into the flour mixture, I would immediately ask her why she didn't ask me to do it, being personally offended that she could bake bread without me. It's been more than a decade since I last did this, but I can still hear my mom's reply saying, "I figured you were busy as a 6-year-old can be, but come and sit by me if you really want to which I'd immediately plop myself down next to her and grab the water pitcher. This is where I got to know my mom, elbow deep in dough. Not that we talked much during this interaction, but this is the mom I grew up knowing. The selfless mom who would spend her afternoons baking bread for us, who would pour her love into baking bread better than any other store bought substitute, who would really do anything in her power to make us happy. This is the mom who shaped me into who I am today. I don't remember much else about this bread making process. I would ask her why she took off her wedding ring, and each time she'd tell me that it's because her hands are getting dirty. She would cut up the dough in perfectly equal circles, and the bread would come out of the oven, golden brown and crunchy, and the whole house would smell heavenly. Mostly, I remember my mom doing what she does best and doing it with love.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for starting us off. Next, we have Michelle Chen.
Hi, so I'll be reading two sections from a short story called Butte about identity and lost friends. You maneuver yourself in line on Main Street for pork buns and emerge with a warm white plastic bag knitted between your fingers. Something, the sunlight or the enormous afternoon crowd crisscrossing the intersection, steers your eyes toward the propped open door of a shop which you look through like a one-way mirror. A slice of face emerges. It's Sharon, trying to steal the miniature red-eared turtles in Mr. Ling's shop. She is a shadow ducking to the linoleum floor the moment Mr. Ling and his assistant are in the back restocking the new shipment of potted plants. The black face mask and her long dark hair, streaming out like the tail of a wild mule, means she could pass for any new immigrant in the heart of Flushing. You want to beg at the soles of her feet, wrap her arm so that it pulls out of her socket with a nasty crunch and a bitter motion, like snapping a joint off a Harbin ice sculpture, upon which the cold air of her soul would pour down onto your cheap shoes, as per convection current rules in Biology 332, the highest class you took before you quit because, fuck, you really don't want to work that hard, and please don't make us look bad to the blonde woman and toddler boy out front fondling the miniature bamboo plants. Your own roommate in Brooklyn is a white girl from Ohio wearing a jade bracelet who already called you a thief and a slob on a yellow post-it note on the bathroom mirror when you weren't tidy as Marie Kondo in her Netflix subscription, nor made eye contact as much as she wanted you to when she upended the apartment looking for a cherry lime flavored vape, which turned out to be tucked inside her boyfriend's backpack when you commuted to Columbia Law School that morning, but not before upending your laundry hamper and letting out an arg that could be a scream, except good girls don't scream at Asian women unless they're thieves and slobs. You step into the shop as she flees with her face down, dropping her bag in the ground behind you to cover the noise and moving into Mr. Ling's line of sight. I'm really sorry, you say, and pass over $6, three for the broken succulent pot on the counter, and three for a large cup of tofu pudding with sugar syrup. The second section I'll be reading begins. It doesn't matter what other people have, your mother says sharply. Now, come help me take this bed apart. You are embarrassed that neighbors and passersby can see you, two Chinese women kneeling on a mattress base in a tiny weed ridden yard ringed by rusted wire fencing. But that changes when your mother gets out to steal tools. You want people to see you two at work, dazzlingly capable, muscles swelling behind your oversized shirts. You will always remember this, the first time you feel truly useful. Together, you cut through layers of plastic wrap and tape that had protected it from rain and mold, then into the veneer fabric, buds of yellow foam opening up in unexpected places, plying apart the wooden frame piece by piece, puzzling out where you could use the hammer and plier, and stacking them together to tear out nails from tail to stern. You are surprised at how easy and hard it is to break it down. Through a silver fog of dust, your mother tells you to hammer in every single nail so they lie flat around every block and beam. Are you just making more work for me? If you're gonna do something, always do it right. These nails are a hazard to everyone, delivery workers, garbage truckers, us. If you're careful and patient, we can all live in harmony. That was how she raised you.
That was great. Thank you so much. So much talent already, and we're only 2 people in. Let's just go to the next person. The next reader is Michael D. Nicola. Take it away, Mike.
Sure. This is a story I'm working on called Spoon and Spindrift. It's just the beginnings, really. The fishing dock creaked as the men proceeded down the large platform on the end. The design of the dock was created as to be easily taken down once the first stings of winter creeped in. Secured only by a few small pins, the dock could be separated and stacked on land before the lake itself froze. The planks of wood that made the utility of the thing lifted and popped the men in the air as the largest of the bunch led the way. At the end awaited a bleached bench slattered in bird shit, mounted beside a post with an owl, also pasted with white stuff. The shortest of the men was the first to cast the reel. With the wind against them, the hook hits the water only a few feet from where he stood. He reeled back the bobber and tried again. The large man, defiant of his size, plops down on the pier before casting out. Who said this was the best time to do this? Why, what's the problem? Said the little man. Because I can't see shit out here, plus it's cold, said the large man as he peered around looking for his thread. This is when the fish liked fuck. They came out of their hidey holes looking for some action, said the third man, fiddling with his reel. Sure, okay, well, if you guys spot two fish making love, let me know. Otherwise, I'd rather be inside. Hey, John, if it's such a problem, then just go back inside and deal with the other guys. I think it's my accountant's job to figure out my tax income bracket. Oh, maybe they're talking about how each of them settled their leases again. For the record, mine's only for a year. Exactly. And look at the views. Mountains in the distance, sun slowly going to bed, the lake's a goddamn rainbow. Maybe if you talk to women with the same enthusiasm, you wouldn't be here alone. Chris. Also a good place to hide a body. Give me a break. Hey, Tom, having trouble there? I think Chris screwed up with this rod, man. The reel keeps locking whenever I try to cast. You sure you just don't know what you're doing? Yes, Chris. Plus, how did I end up with the lefty rod? John and Chris laugh. Last one out gets what they get. Gets what they get. The family who owns this place probably has it for the off chance somebody fishing is a lefty. I can string you up on the toddler's rod. I got to go back and I got to go back and fix this. Anyone want to come back and help me out? Tom, we've only got an hour before it's dark. Just hang out, have a few beers. Maybe I'll get bored and I'll let you use this rod for a bit. Chris says with a wink. Yeah, I'll pass. I'm just gonna head in. I bought some vodka. Maybe I can get these clowns into trouble. Plus, I left Cynthia with them. I don't imagine she'll last very long. The house had been built on the side of a hill that surrounded the entirety of the lake. The lowest point, a long patch of grass supported by a concrete wall, had a shed built into it, leading up a long flight of white stairs was another platform. Here one could enjoy the lake's view without being near it. Tom assumed children in polo shirts, dads in polo shirts, dogs in polo shirts, the kids sprinkling sugar on grapefruit. This this is where the perfects would eat their breakfast. Winded from the climb, Tom stopped to watch his friend jumping and waving. John must have caught something. The water rippled to the east, glowing like red hot mercury, and then Chris was pulled into it. There was a brief struggle. John had lurched to his feet, falling to his knee as Chris frantically splashed around the dock. Tom sped back down to the stairs and to see John hauling Chris over the end of the pier. Hey, everything good out there, Chris? Okay? Tom shouts from the safe land of the grass. Neither man responded. Chris regained his footing. John tried to aid him in this, but was pushed off with a furrowed brow. Chris, drenched from his fall, rips off his now weighted winter jacket and tosses it to the boards. Then he runs. He runs back down the dock, shoving Tom out of his way, up the stairs and the hill, and then out of sight.
Thank you so much. So much visceral detail. I'm so into this. I love it. Next, we have Kenya Fitzpatrick.
Hello. I'm going to be reading a piece that I wrote called 91 Brooklyn Avenue. It's about the death of my grandfather. On March 11, 2011, life took a turn for the worst. I was in my room upstairs doing my homework. My mom was downstairs cleaning the bathroom. I heard light coughing sounds coming from downstairs. I ignored it. Second later, the cough got louder and more coarse. Something didn't feel right. I ran down the stairs to see what was going on. When I walked into my grandfather's room, he was gasping for air. He kept yelling, "Open the window, I cannot breathe." I opened the window and went to get my mom. I told her that there was something wrong with him and she had to come quick. He started screaming, "You're killing me, you're killing me." We didn't know what he was talking about or who he was talking to. My aunt said it was the angel of death coming to get him. I called 911 and tried to calm him down, but it didn't work. His cough and heavy breathing stopped, but so did everything else, and he started seizing and foaming at the mouth. My mother could not take it, and she left the room. I held his hand crying and told him that I loved him, something that I'd never told him before. Everything stopped again. This time there was no sign of life in him. The paramedics finally came. They noticed me because I had started volunteering as an EMS explorer the week before. When they got into the room, he was in cardiac arrest. They put his body on his bedroom floor and they tried to resuscitate him. All the while, my mom was screaming in the background. There was nothing we could do. I felt helpless. I ran upstairs to my bedroom, got on my knees, and prayed. Then I got up, pulled myself together, and decided that I had to be strong for my mother. When I came back downstairs, they had his body on a backboard and they were going down the ramp. His 6'4", 240-pound body was lifeless and cold. They declared him dead in the hospital, but I knew that he died on the floor in his room. That was it. He was gone. Walking back into the house was hard. Going up the ramp that they brought his lifeless body down. Walking into his bedroom where they resuscitated his body. His bed lay empty for the first time since he had gotten it. The hallways were no longer filled with his snoring and foul language. It was hard for me to cope, and I begged God to hear, "Can you give me a glass of water one last time?" I blamed myself for years because I felt like I could have done more to save him. The guilt kept me up at night, and I kept reliving his death in my sleep. It caused me to wake up screaming some days. Over the years, I've learned to cope with this traumatic experience. I decided to stay in EMS Explorers. At 15 years old, I began riding the ambulance and serving my community. My first call was a cardiac arrest for a man the same age as my grandfather. We did everything we could, but we were unable to bring him back. I watched as his family tried to put together the pieces of what they lost, the same way I had months before.
It scared me, but I took it as a sign to keep going. I eventually moved up and became a New York State EMT at the age of 18. I also became a medical assistant my senior year of high school and volunteered as much as I could at hospitals. Now I'm a medical scribe at an urgent care. It's been 9 years later, and a lot has changed. We have all grown older. The floors now creak. The pain is beginning to fade, and no longer search for his voice. They tore down the old swing set 2 weeks ago. However, when I look around, all I can see is what once was. And I'm grateful for that. Sometimes when it's quiet and I'm alone, I'm reminded of the things he taught me. The first is that tough love is the best love. My grandfather may not have been the affectionate type. Come to think of it, I don't think I ever hugged him, and I don't think he ever told me that he loved me. But I know that he did because he was brave enough to say the things no one else would. He loved me enough to be honest and prepare me for the harsh realities of society that we live in. It gave me thick skin. Another thing I learned is that the show must go on. This traumatic experience took me a long time to deal with. However, I realized that his death should not stop me from living. I used that pain to propel me forward into the next chapter of my life. Lastly, and most importantly, he taught me that I don't have to do anything in life but stay black and die. When I was a kid, this quote made no sense to me. However, as I got older, I realized that this is not just an angry Morgan Freeman quote from the movie Lean on Me, or just another excerpt from a Langston Hughes poem. For me, it is a reminder that no one in this life can make you do anything that you don't want to. We may not have a choice in race and mortality, but we all have a choice in what we accept and what we don't accept. So the next time you drive past 91 Brooklyn, look past its faded exterior and the vines that entangle themselves around it. 91 Brooklyn is a gem to my family, and it is a testament to the fact that we are not our circumstances and that every day is a new chance to succeed.
That was beautiful and so powerful. Thank you so much, Kenya. Next, we have Riya Gandhi.
Thank you so much. I'll be reading an excerpt from my piece entitled House of Cards. 1. I always thought I could fix anything, a trait I had picked up from my grandfather. Broken stuffed animals, the pink Nintendo DS whose hinge had come half loose, the silver Optimum remote that didn't seem to connect to the television. Beyond objects, I tried to fix living things. I thought I could fix my parents, fix the constant barrage of shrieking voices in the house, the smashing of dishes against the tile floor, the slamming of front and bedroom doors. I thought I could fix him, my father, my best friend. I thought I could clear him of his obsessions for gambling, the yearning he had held for the bitter taste of beer in the basement pantry. I thought I could show him the way forward, to recovery. Addiction doesn't work that way. I thought I could fix him until I couldn't. Recovery, relapse, recovery, relapse. 2. My therapist says addiction is a disease. It manifests itself in many different ways, whether that be a drug addiction or a dependence for spending money. The executive functions of the brain become flawed, practical judgments made misconstrued. The behavior is unmanageable, unbalanced, and flows into other aspects of one's life. People say addiction is a choice, but nothing could be further from the truth. 3. Addiction holds no prejudice. Sometimes I wish it would. I wish alcohol addiction had not grasped my father by the throat, choking him with the same substance he grew to love. I wish gambling addiction had not tied his hands, the caring hands I was so familiar with, behind his back, rolling semi-permeable tape over his mouth, holding back the truth, yet letting out all the lies. Above all, I wish he had learned to depend on us. 4. How do you make sense of a world that has suddenly become so cruel? You start at the beginning. 5. As a child, addiction was hardly part of my vocabulary. We moved to the bright white house on Leicester Street in 2nd grade. Every day at 8:15, my dad would knock on my bedroom door and gently shake me awake. The bed was far too big for a twig-like 8-year-old. It was a bed fit for a princess, or at least I thought of it that way. The canopy above my head gently waved when he sat on the corner of my bed. If I was the princess, he was definitely the king of the land. I would crawl out of bed, glancing into the vanity at the lion's mane that had become of my hair while he retreated back downstairs to prepare breakfast. When I was done showering and brushing my teeth, I ran downstairs, practically slipping on the wooden stairs in my cotton socks. We sat and ate cereal together, me with my Cookie Crisps and him with his Honey Nut Cheerios. We talk about homework, new friends like M and old friends like T, and the troublesome character that was A. Even if he didn't say many words, he always listened. Dad's always been charismatic. 6. In elementary school, it was our tradition to walk to the bus stop positioned in front of the house with Shaggy. We never really knew his name, the golden retriever. I was the youngest kid at that bus stop, always wide-eyed in wonder at the older kids. At first, I cowered behind my dad, hesitant to interact, but Dad just talked. He'd switch gears real fast, donning his extrovert guise. I was in awe. If he could make friends, maybe I could too. Perhaps it was his sociability that allowed him to make friends with the best of folks, the worst of folks.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. So much heart in all these pieces. I'm so excited to be hearing all you. Okay, next is Marianna Knapp. Go ahead.
Thank you. So this is either a short lyric essay or a long prose poem. It's sort of up to the individual how you choose to interpret it. And it's called Crocus. And I hope very much that you like it. Yeah. Crocus. I wake up with explosions of you on my eyelids. Poetry gives us something to cling to, our glistening spider web, dewdrops dripping from sticky silk strands. I write my gosh damn songs, and I won't say goddamn God. Damn me to hell if I ever take your name in vain. Put me on my knees. I'll never kneel before a man, and never ask one to kneel for me. Neil Gaiman could take a carving knife and slice both my arms in two from wrist to shoulder, and I would still beg him for one more short story. I could never dream of oceans at the ends of lanes. I'd plead for him to pour out all the water in his soul and let me lap up the salt it leaves behind when it evaporates. Your name aches to say. Perhaps I should moan it and make you ache for a change. Put your tongue in the hollow of my neck and I'll follow suit and tie, but let the record show I only want to touch your nerves if I can peel off the skin and muscle first. Slide your fingers in between my ribs. Take hold of my cage. Take heart. Take me home. I've been sleeping poorly. Sleep poorly with me. I must warn you, I switched my luggage with someone else's on the journey, and when I arrived home and rattled the padlock open, I found that where I had packed up my desire, there was only a dull curiosity. I do not miss my old valise. I consider it a robbery for you more than for me. Desire is a ghost that haunts my romanticism. I am, at my core, a woman of heavy leather books and fragrant berry tea. If I could release myself from artistry, perhaps that is all I would be, but creativity demands me at any hour of the day it chooses. It's not confined, not something that compels me, not something I control. I choose to wrestle with it or relinquish myself. What would happen if I allowed it to swallow me up? I think I would become absolutely monstrous. A secret place in my spirit has always wanted to indulge in a tempestuous affair. Love is the relinquishment of power. Allow someone to love me, and I have more power than God has ever granted me before. I still believe in God, and I must, for the 100,000,001st time, ask our Father who art in heaven to forgive me. I have fooled myself into believing that I loved another. I ran my tongue along his lips by natural accident. There is a garden in my chest that sprouts panic weeds when I don't tend it. This was sowing it with fervent, fragile exuberance. The roots of it were so shallow. He was not you. I don't know where all this need came from, if it was in me when I was born, or if it blossomed as I grew, or if I wrenched it from the soil with my grubby, greedy street urchin hands. All the love in this galaxy is not enough to quell the machination in my soul. Sometimes I'm nearly asleep and I can feel you breathing next to me, your chest rising and falling in the steady kick drum beat I need to keep me home. I hope to God that you exist. Let's do this again next spring.
Thank you so much. Wow, so much beauty in that piece. Thank you so much for sharing. Next we have Adebusola Owasheni.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to be reading a piece titled How to Eat an Oreo as a Black Person. I hope you learn from it and I hope you enjoy it. How to eat an Oreo as a Black person. Step 1, take the cookie, separating one half with the cream from the other half without the cream. Step 2, use a knife to scrape the cream off of one of the halves. Step 3, toss the cream into the garbage. Step 4, place the 2 cookie halves back together and enjoy. I love Oreo cookies. The chocolatey goodness of the 2 crunchy wafers holds the richness of the sweet, silky white cream filling that's sandwiched in between them. But in order to preserve my Blackness and eliminate the whiteness that lurks within me, I've got to modify my Oreo cookie or maybe stop eating them altogether. It was in middle school that the term Oreo was habitually used to describe me. Now, don't get me wrong, I was never shunned or isolated. I was pretty well liked in middle school. Dare I even say popular? But that didn't stop the white girl in a black girl's body joke from wearing its ugly head quite frequently. That didn't stop the jabs at my preference for Converses. Honestly, can someone tell me what is so wrong with wearing them? For the most part, they're the only sneakers that I'm into. I may have had high tops and low tops for each color, and I may have had a different color for each day of the week, but that was just me being a dork, not acting white. Everyone else was into Jordans, and everybody and their moms were sneakerheads. There's nothing wrong with that, but personally, I couldn't care less. Apparently, everybody else could. Thank God we were a uniform school. God forbid I dressed like a white girl. I got ragged on for my love for Kelly Clarkson, Maroon 5, and Disney Channel music, but they all slapped. They still do. Of course, I love Destiny's Child, Rihanna, and Usher. Of course, I love Drake because what 12-year-old wasn't sitting at the window seat of the yellow school bus on class trips, staring out the window into nothingness, headphones in, and draking? If you don't know what draking is, you're either too young or too old. You watched the BET Awards last night? No, I'm not really into watching award shows. I bet if your white singers were on, you'd watch that BS. I literally just said. I never saw how my love for white music correlated with my taste in men. You would definitely be the type to marry a white guy. Well, I've only ever been romantically interested in Black men, but whenever I happened to lay eyes on an attractive white man, of course I would subconsciously chant, he could get it any day, anytime. KJ Appa could get it. Bradley Cooper could get it. Matthew McConaughey could get it, but so could Skip Marley and Damson Idris. Oof, a young Denzel could definitely get it. Black men are delicious creatures. There's no doubt about it. My fondness for some white men doesn't disqualify that. My taste in white people music doesn't either. My inability to twerk was another one of my white girl qualities, or should I say, a lack of true Black girl qualities. At middle school dances, while girls were gyrating on boys and other girls, I sat down and waited patiently for songs like the Cha Cha Slide, the Cupid Shuffle, or Jump on It to blast through the speakers. They're Black throwback classics for crying out loud. Is that not enough for you? Twerking is just not my thing. I've tried, trust me. I've searched up videos on YouTube and practiced in front of my mirror, all to no avail. Well, I'm sorry that I can't twerk. Well, not really. There's this phrase that Nigerians use when they aren't trying to hear your apology. Sorry for yourself, which basically translates to shove it. So yeah, sorry for yourself. But honestly, it's okay. Not all Black girls are blessed with that God-given talent. We all can't shake what our mamas gave us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was such a good story to mark our halfway point. Thank you for sharing. Next, we have Ryan Pariso.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will be reading an excerpt from a novel that I've been working on. First, though, I'd like to say everyone's doing a great job. This is wonderful. Thank you very much, Amy, for putting this all together, and everyone else who was involved, of course. But here we go. I'm sorry to say that I'm not there to share this experience with you all, but the recording ended there, without another word, just static. I raised a gloved hand to the mounting chatter of concern in the room. Even the oldest of us seemed to be distraught, their pallid faces downcast. I stood to face them, brushing the wrinkles and dust off from my robe. Tell me, my brothers and sisters, have we not seen worse than this? Have we not already survived on our own this long? I felt the eyes of my congregation. Tell me, why do you tremble at the loss of mediocrity? I assure you, a bright future lies before us, just over the horizon and within our grasp. We just need to hold on and keep pushing forward. A man rose from the ashen pews in the back like a shadow. His thick drawl pierced the crippling silence of the church. I've lost so much already, as have we all. And this is too much. Father, I have prayed every day for this future that has not come. We need to do something now, or we're all going to die, just like Barrows. Mr. Haskins, now is not the time to lose faith. We have come so far. I just need you to trust me. I reckon you know better than to call me that. He died when my family died. It's just Trevor now. His shoulders slumped and the shadow seemed to expand. Drawing an unsteady breath, Trevor looked me dead in the eye. We need food, is what we need, not trust. Charred wood crumbled off the pew as he kicked it aside, storming out of the half collapsed archway that used to be the front of the church. Everyone turned to watch him leave, unsure of whether to follow. I sighed, letting the gravity of this new burden settle onto my shoulders. We can only assume that Jim Barrows is dead. There is no evidence, but I admit this recording does not leave us with much confidence. That is exactly why we must keep our faith. Approaching the remnants of the altar as I spoke, I raised up my hands in fierce gesticulation. The vaulted ceilings, torn asunder by the hellfires that left us here, revealed the roiling gray clouds above that I now reached toward. They blanketed the horizon on all sides, leaving the skies in a perpetual state of obfuscation, as if to say our every option has the same outcome. The clouds were bleak and disappointing. Reluctantly, I brought my gaze back to the scarred reality of my disintegrating congregation. Their spirit was broken, and there was nothing I could do. We need to keep our faith. We need to stay together and work together and move forward together. Even I thought the words felt hollow. First to leave after Trevor Haskins was Colin Marjorie, a spitting image of me not 20 years prior, though he'd never know, as that secret followed his mother to the grave. Next was Patricia Learbell, followed closely, as always, by Herman Morchester. One by one they left, through that same crumbling archway as Trevor, until it was only me and Everett Barnum. He'd likely outlive us all. Do you need a hand standing up, Everett? He smiled at me, all gums save for the one rotted tooth. In a voice composed of dust, he just said, "Please." I ushered him outside and escorted him back down the block to the collapsed walls that he slept beneath, one propped up against the other in a triangular fashion, holding back a mountain of rubble. He settled into a rat's nest of tattered clothes and patchwork blankets. I relit the barrel fire a few feet from him, not that it got cold anymore. The earth radiated heat these days. As I turned to walk back to the church, I heard the drought of his voice mumbling, "Barrows is dead." That was the moment I lost my faith. The moment I knew we were all going to die and it was only a matter of time. Sleep did not come that night as I replayed those last words of Jim Barrows over and over, letting it quietly break through the silence of the church. It was either that or listen to the tortured moans and crumbling debris of our slowly dying community like every night before. Rain fell, hissing as it touched the surface of the earth, as if offended by its very existence. The steam was suffocating, an acrid mixture of soot and copper. Time disappeared as I waited for daybreak, praying out of habit that the sun would finally pierce through the clouds and bless us once more. My prayers went unanswered, and the dismal skies remained. Dawn had become a gradual transition from pitch black to ashen gray, and all the world melted together through bloodshot eyes as I made my way back to Everett's hovel. We've always let the elderly eat first, and that meant just him now. Sometime during the night, his wall gave way, his life reduced to a pool of blood now glistening around some of the loose rubble. I guess I was wrong about him. And that's where I'll end.
Thank you so much. Can't wait to read that novel. Hear the best of it. Awesome. Thank you. Emma Rowan is next.
Hi everyone. I'm reading an excerpt from my fiction short story called Star Tour. So I'll just start. At the first sight of my headlights gleaming off the silver metal prongs holding the roadway sign in place, I make a sharp turn right, landing off the road and slam the brakes. It's a couple yards away across the road. With my high beams, I can see the entire shimmery backside. Opaque and firm, it gave nothing away. No clues, no warnings. I flip the lights off, take the key out of the ignition, and take a deep breath. The cold air pierces my lungs and makes me shiver. It's quiet and still. Stepping out of the car, I stand and gaze out at the desert. The mountains were a choppily cut page of black construction paper set against an ashy, graphite wall spotted in white paint. For the first time in a while, I look directly up. The sight makes it easy to believe there's more stars in the sky than grains of sand on Earth. They are endless and infinite. Some are bigger than others, some are smaller, some are blinking, flashing, twinkling, some with red undertones, some with blue, some purple, pin-sized holes poked in the plastic lid of our tight Tupperware container so we can breathe. Looking up at the sky in the middle of nowhere, Nevada, never gets old. It gets familiar, like a favorite blanket that smells like you or a nickname given from a best friend. The thing about a star tour is all the stops look pretty much the same. All of the stars in the galaxy we can see range from just a couple to millions of light years away. That's how long it takes the light to reach us. So looking up at the stars is like looking back in time, sort of. My mom liked to think each star is a snapshot of a moment in time in a way. So I'm supposed to look out my bedroom window and see the day she took that picture of me outside Sal's, or the first time I snuck up behind her while she was peering through her telescope, or the time we spent the night up on the roof, waiting for a UFO that wasn't coming. But I don't see any of that. I just see spilled glitter across a black canvas. There's no one coming, but I still look both ways before crossing the dark road, carrying a heavy flashlight I found tucked under the passenger seat. I stop in my tracks, kicking up some dirt, a foot behind the sign for the highway. Frozen to the ground, I reach out a hand to touch the cold metal rod. I want to be wrong. I want to believe that picture is still up there on this stupid sign. I want to see a UFO. I want her to be right. But that's where the trouble starts, with wanting, with hope and faith and belief. There's nothing out there. There's no little green men coming to take over the planet, to colonize us, to eat us, to save us. No one is coming. Area 51 is just a testing site for missiles and drones. Any and all UFOs seen are just Chinese satellites. The Alien Research Center is just a glorified gift shop. The extraterrestrial highway is just Nevada State Route 375. The stars are just gigantic spheres of hydrogen and helium. Why would anyone want to stop here anyway? What's so good about Earth? How could my mother believe in this great beyond when everything was so terrible? How can I? I'm so mad at her, and it's so much easier than being sad. What's the point in looking up at the stars when the very center of the galaxy has vanished, when the brightest star has died out? Why can't I just take another step forward and turn and look at the front side of this damn highway sign? And that's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Great. So we're going to keep going. We have Pranali Shah next.
So I'm going to read two pieces of mine. Then the first one is poetry. Cries of the diary. We are a mess, you and I. The scribbles of pen, a broken pencil, expressing the clenches of your fine face. Or the ink stains when you are on post, trying to figure out your thought. Lost. On the Monday blues, my parallel lines wait for the trail of your words. Please tell me if you are okay, sis. I thought I have lost you. We are a beautiful mess, you and I. When I see the heavenly lines, flawless like a painter, giving me a beautiful stroke. My stale pages are beaming with no traces of tears. The coast is clear. And the transparencies of Tuesday, where the terrors no longer torment you. Bless you, sis. Bless the power. We are a chaotic mess, you and I. I see you jumping from a line to another. My blankness of the pages awaken to wait for its time and hear another story as the words hurrying to each other, not too far apart. Ah, I see it is Friday. I have no clue what others went through. I see you are not okay, sis, but please calm down. Let my pages have his breath. We are a mess, but I'm your only truth. I captivate you in ways no soul ever would. But come on, owner, how long do I have to be your slave? Let me and my king live for happiness, just like I heard you write about Martin Luther's speech. Monday to Sunday, for all the multiverse, I want to live to hear happiness. I have a dream. Yet another human to talk about your sadness, sis. I'm done. Please save me. The coast is no longer clear. And the next piece is I remember the first time I hopped onto the plane to the place unknown. I was a young girl with a backpack that carried huge dreams. A dream without boundaries. 1,000 dreams where no one could question the possibilities of pink sky. I remember the first time I got my boarding pass. I knew there was no looking back, only to march on and on. For the betterment, for the better part, and for the best of me. It was as if I was finally setting myself free. I remember the first time I got a window seat in the flight. My dad somehow knew that the clouds would give me company. I remember seeing the New York skyline second time as a acceptor is welcome. It provided me with a grand celebration for my firm decisions. I remember the first time I stepped out of airport and hopped onto the first cab in New York City. It is the first time I learned to hail a cab. I remember the first time I was swept in tall and loud crowd. They say it is different experience the first time you visit the city. I disapprove. It takes a breath every single day. Timid, I felt insignificant. Somehow, I still felt as if I belonged. I remember listening to the cries from the corner of the street, unfamiliar to tourists. They had the stories to their clothes with patches. I remember the feeling different, yet something that was similar to the home of my own. Little did I know, this was the land of my freedom, my calling. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So much heart in all these pieces. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Great. Next we have Nicole Scala.
I'm going to be reading the introduction to my essay, How Long Will a Heart Last? Do you remember the poem? He asked me with glazed eyes half closed. His head wasn't turned towards me. Instead, he faced the television. A football game was on, but he didn't see it. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. He was but a shell of the man he used to be. I turned towards my grandmother as he asked me again, Nicole, do you remember the poem? I knew he meant prayer. I knew it by heart. I've known it since I was a child. Ma, my grandmother, tried to explain what he meant. She knew the prayer he was talking about as well as I did. When my grandfather was a Marine, he and his company would say a little prayer every day, and this was a tradition that he had carried for the rest of his life. I know a lot of poems, I told Ma. I have a ton of them memorized. I don't know what he's talking about. I couldn't say the prayer or even admit I knew it. A lump formed in my throat and my eyes began to burn. If I said the little prayer, I would break down, and I didn't want to make him feel guilty, again, for something that wasn't his fault. We were all bound to die one day or another, and he had lived a long life, a life longer than the doctors had originally prophesied. I still say his prayer in my head every time I think of him. I pray he can hear me say it, and that he listens to it from wherever he is now. But even more, I hope he knew that I was bluffing when I told him that I forgot it. And I hope he forgives me for lying to him. For when I get to heaven, to St. Peter I will tell, one more Marine reporting, sir. I've spent my time in hell.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nicole. Next we have Lauren Tagliante.
Thank you, Amy. I am reading an excerpt from a piece I wrote called The Colonization of Cats, and this section I call, If Black Cats Are Bad Luck, Then Call Me a Witch. I am 10 years old, and my dad and I are at the no-kill animal shelter we've been volunteering at. The energy here is depressing and unnerving, as though there are anxiety-inducing agents interspersed with oxygen in the air. There are only a couple other volunteers. I overhear them say that adoption rates are low. I've only ever seen a couple people visit to adopt, so that makes sense. I get to work petting and grooming all the cats I can see. A meow like a siren wails, and I turn to see who it is. I notice a pair of green eyes on a backdrop of black fur staring at me on a tilted, curious face. I open her cage, and she nuzzles against me. I pet her the rest of the day. I was told to never ask the names of the cats, but I can't resist. This one is just too perfect. I ask the manager, and he reluctantly tells me it's Jasmine. I beg my dad to adopt Jasmine. He refuses. I settle for knowing that Jasmine will be waiting for me when I come back next weekend, and the weekend after that, and the weekend after that. I know she'll be waiting for me. Black cats rarely get adopted because of the superstition that they are bad luck. Just as I expect, Jasmine's there weekend after weekend, until one day she isn't there. I asked the manager through tears where Jasmine went, and he tells me that Jasmine got adopted. Directionless, I try to become friends with the other cats, but week after week, every cat that becomes my favorite gets adopted. I keep losing the cats I love. I walk into the back room to get a clean hairbrush for the cats, and I notice two people standing over the sink, holding a dog with the fur on its neck wet with blood. I ask if the dog needs help. They rush me out of the room. And that's when I realize this isn't a no-kill shelter. They're slaughtering that poor dog. They kill animals right here in the back room. Every screech I've heard from the back room wasn't the dogs playing with each other like they had told me. They were cries of pain, of absolute agony and horror. That's why they didn't want me asking what the names of the cats I loved were. They didn't want me to get attached because they knew that the cats would be gone sooner rather than later. They always say how adoption rates are low, and yet my cat friends are always disappearing quickly and being replaced by new cats. No one was adopting them. The shelter had been killing them. Jasmine wasn't adopted. She was slaughtered. It isn't until the shelter is bought by a private company that genuinely does not kill animals that we return and have our suspicions confirmed. We had been volunteering for a kill shelter that whole time and didn't even know it. There's nothing wrong with these cats that weren't killing them. There are just too many of them, as those who are proponents for kill shelters say, as if that justifies a genocide. I'm sure cats think that there are too many humans and would kill us if they could. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Thank you. Moving along, we have 3 left. Next is Noreen Townsend.
Thank you. I chose for my reading an excerpt from a personal essay called Thieves. By the time I reached my car at the end of the driveway, I already regretted leaving in that storm of unsaid words. It felt much colder outside. I stood there staring at the front of the house. I thought, I should go back in and fix this. I wanted to go back in and fix it. I wanted to apologize for acting like an idiot, explain, talk, be in his arms again. But his mother was in there asleep. I was certain the situation was not going to be helped by me waking the woman up. What a fabulous introduction that would be. Hi, nice to finally meet you. Don't mind me, I'm just going to head upstairs and make sure your son's pipes are clean for him. The thought of his mother reminded me there was another option. I could stay angry. It was so much easier. I got in the car and drove slowly to the main road, unsure of what to do. There was nothing to do on a weeknight in the boondocks of Long Island. I didn't want to go home at 10 o'clock and risk running into my father and his questions. You're home early, trouble in paradise? Instead, I headed east straight for the nearest bar, Chester's. Maybe Chris would get tired of reading and come look for me. I could still smell him on my skin. All I really wanted to do was be back in that bed watching him read. Does the man with the greasy oil-smelling hands eat steak for dinner every so often? Does he pick his teeth and still find pieces of my breast lodged between them? Does he put that elbow, the one that smashed my face, casually on the table, waiting for coffee and dessert? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love the details. Great, thank you. And next we have Sarah Villaman.
Thank you, Amy. I have to say that you guys' pieces are really good. I'm gonna be speaking on a spoken word that I wrote. It's titled The Toxic Meal. My mother often serves our dinners with sides, edible sides, as well as audible. Sarah, straighten your hair. Get out of the sun. You're getting too dark. She is literally brown skin with 4A hair. Make it make sense. My mom hates it when I wear my curls out. It's even worse when I wear box braids. Sarah, you look too black for me. People assume she's African American every day, but no. She's just a woman of African descent who speaks Spanish. If I'm black and ugly, you thought I was gonna marry someone else who was black and ugly? Well, that explains my father's hazel eyes, light skin, and brown straight hair. I took a DNA test, you know, the ones from 23andMe. My mom had already determined her results in her head. You're not even going to be 20% African. You're almost completely white. Wrong. 47% African, 43% European, 5% Native American, 1% Middle Eastern, 4% was unable to be assigned to a specific region. Recent ancestry from the Dominican Republic. She's ignorant, but she can count. My mother didn't have anything to say afterwards. Let me explain the relationship between the Dominican Republic and Haiti, whom both share the island of Hispaniola, who Christopher Columbus infected, and not just with smallpox. Imagine sharing the island with someone you hate. Imagine suppressing them because they are predominantly Black, even though most of your population is also Black. Imagine not knowing the difference between Dominicans and Haitians, so you go around asking every Black person to say parsley in Spanish, and when they don't pronounce it right because their first language is Creole, you kill them. This was called ethnic cleansing by a dictator who was part Haitian himself. Make it make sense. You can't even if you tried. You can't even imagine how she reacted when I told her I had a Haitian boyfriend. Sarita, you have to refine the race. Refining, to take away unwanted elements in something, to remove impurities. How is it that the darker your skin color is in the Dominican Republic, the more racist and colorist you are? Black and ugly, she said. Anti-Blackness seems to be a common meal that many Dominicans eat at the dinner table. Served on a silver platter to our ancestors by Spaniards, a recipe passed down through generations, one that my mother tried to feed me herself, a meal that didn't sit well in my stomach, one that I couldn't digest. I can tell you that I am mostly of African descent. I can tell you that I am largely of European descent. I am happy that I am those things. I love that I am Dominican, that I could sing along to bachata in Spanish and dance to merengue. I can make a sancocho in the summer and devour it with an avocado. I'm super excited to have kids with my boyfriend in the future and tell them that Black is beautiful, to have them learn about my amazing culture as well as his. But I will not serve them that meal. The only thing that needs to be refined about all of this is that recipe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, I have goosebumps. Awesome, thank you. Last but not least is Anna Yefroyev.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for reading. It's such an honor to be hearing this, and I'm thinking like that in 10 years I'll see your books in bookstores and I'll think that I know all of you. So thank you. And mine is an excerpt from a longer piece I'm working on. It's okay, so I'm gonna start. On evenings when rehearsal ran late at the conservatoire, I took the train from St. Pancras station with my sheet music exploding out of my bag. The other musicians stayed late to practice, while I had no qualms about walking away from my instrument. No intimacy tainted the instruments that I touched because they were, and they had to be, interchangeable. I could not be exclusively committed to a singular forte piano because I was always a visitor at my own performance. The others took great care of their clarinets and oboes and violas, while I cherished my one-night stands with a Steinway and then a Baldwin and occasionally a less experienced but more versatile Kauai. I would never be a professional musician. Mediocrity across mediums was a sad destiny. While I devoured the Russian classics on journeys between Paris and London, I could never imagine that I would be writing articles in teen magazines. My latest assignment, how to successfully swoon a man. But what kind? I thought that they were all picky but in different ways. There must have been a set of general rules. Mention Tarkovsky at some point. Maybe subtly hint at a preference of Bach. Change the subject quickly if he inquires further. Make a face of faux disgust if surrealism is mentioned. Add that the brushstrokes are too nuanced for your taste. Should I admit that I'm a pseudo-intellectual? Even a label of pseudo-intellectualism is too generous for me. As a student, I often took too many tranquilizers. I needed to sleep and then to wake up like a zombie. It was March and it was snowing, not heavily enough to constitute an excuse. My clothes were mismatched. I didn't know it back then. They were all on the same spectrum after all. My professor's office had the biggest windows but the smallest table, and our knees touched. I imagined that her chair was made out of books, so was the table. She took one glance at me and, walking to the door, announced to nobody in particular that her student was in desperate need of coffee. I looked it. Everyone fed me back then. I don't remember how many couches I slept on, but I remember that one was covered in velvet upholstery. Purple, I think, or green. I used to wear purple and green together all the time. When she brought me my coffee and I had made sure that the sugar was dark brown and organic and that the milk was 2% and no more, she began to read my work. Too many ornaments, she said. She often said that to the other students too. You wouldn't just take all your extravagant clothes and wear them at once. But at that, she took one look at my flamingo earrings and the feathered cap and the lace blouse and violet skirt with green stockings and shook her head like an etch-a-sketch erasing an idea. How many points will be taken off for that cliche? Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Anna. And thank you, all the readers. What an amazing hour we spent. So much talent. This was the undergraduate showcase of the fall semester. You all have produced such amazing work. I think everyone should get their autographs now because we're going to be seeing, published work from all these 15 writers. Thank you so much, everyone who tuned in, and thank you again to the readers for sharing your work. Bye.